I've built my career on scaling businesses, cutting through red tape, and turning obstacles into opportunities. I know how to navigate tough regulations and bring ideas to life, whether in tech or cannabis, but even with all my experience, I don't have all the answers. Fortunately, I know people who do.
You know, we have all of these taxes to contend with and so much other red tape that we have to pay attorneys for, and everyone assumes that, you know, cannabis is lined.
Today, I'm talking to Pineau, owner of STEM Haverhill, who spent 5 years battling NIMBY neighbors, legal challenges, and municipal greed.
They asked me to pay them $30,000.
$30,000 just to be quiet? Not just to keep her business alive, but to fight for what's right. She's not only taking on the system, but she's also building community through initiatives like Green Goddess Invitational, Golf Tournament, and setting the stage for something big in social consumption.
We would love to design a really cool educational space up there, a space that brand partners could utilize for any sort of educational gathering they would
take over in a sense.
Yeah, take over, but also be open to the public.
We'll dive into her journey, the future of STEM, and why independent cannabis businesses must keep pushing for their place in this industry. If you're looking for real lessons from the front lines of business, you're in the right place. So let's get to it.
My name is Caroline Pineau, and I own and operate STEM, a retail cannabis dispensary in the heart of downtown Haverhill.
Downtown Haverhill. Now, though, that brings back memories. So why Haverhill, first of all?
So my husband and I, that's the first place we lived together. I was 22 when I moved to Haverhill. I owned and operated a yoga studio there for almost a decade. So definitely became home to me. I'm from Maine originally. And just decided that we wanted to take our next entrepreneurial venture together. So my husband was working in Boston at the time in the tech world, and I was, side hustling with the yoga studio while I was trying to get STEM licensed.
So you were taking from... So you were still running this yoga studio.
Yes.
Then you're at the same time trying to launch STEM.
Yes. And actually the experience that we had being business owners for almost a decade in Haverhill is ultimately what allowed us to apply for the state's economic empowerment program.
Okay. Now, economic empowerment, because Haverhill is one of the towns that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. Is that how it is?
That is correct. And because, so my understanding is the distinction between these special license types is while social equity will be tied to the person, economic empowerment is tied to the community. And since Haverhill is an area that has been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, this special license class is designed to help stimulate the economy there by having someone local at the helm that really cares about the community.
Got it. Yeah, so just really curious. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I can think about with Haverhill. I call it Haverhill. I'm actually originally from Tewksbury, so not that far.
Okay, you're kind of in the neighborhood.
But I've heard some butchering of that name. Haverhill,
Haverhill. That's what they say on the Downeaster train.
Oh yeah, the train.
Yeah, Haverhill, Haverhill. The southern people really struggle with Haverhill, and my best friend is from the south, so it's been fun.
Where'd you come up with the name STEM, by the way?
My husband came up with the name, and we tried to keep it in the family of our first business, which was the Yoga Tree. So we wanted to keep it in the tree lineage, and we thought it was a new beginning for us. STEM, new growth. That's kind of where STEM came from.
So interesting. So why did you even want to start a dispensary of all things? Now, obviously, when did you start? 20?
We opened our doors in 2020, May of 2020. However, we began the process back in 2018. We were actually, my parents live in the Virgin Islands, and we were down on vacation visiting my parents and sitting on the beach, kind of just talking about what was next. I was getting a little stagnant in my career and wanted another entrepreneurial challenge. And Adam, my dad, and I were just chatting, and we said, how about cannabis? And we kind of like made a pact then and there to come home and look into the economic empowerment application. And we applied over the course of a weekend. We just sat behind our computers, and we had a young daughter at the time, so that was interesting. But then we were accepted by the state, and that's really what kicked off our process is, okay, I think we actually could do this. And then we quickly thereafter, started looking for property.
That's fantastic. So you literally came from the yoga side of things, but you were like, hey, it's stagnant. It's like, it's still great. Yoga's awesome. Obviously, you still probably very much love it, but you were just like, what's my next challenge?
I needed another challenge. I loved what I had built. I was ready for my next creative move. And I was so fortunate that a friend of mine was able to step in and actually purchase the business from me and is keeping it running to this day. So
that's fantastic. So that business, the yoga studio, is still alive?
Yes. The Yoga Tree and STEM are just 5 doors up from one another on Washington Street. So I have been a business owner on Washington Street for 15 years.
I was going to say probably something like that. So, but why cannabis? Were you a consumer for a long time?
I've been a lifelong consumer, as has my husband. It's something that we use to manage our well-being, and it was a chance to put our hands forward at something that's never been done before. This new legal market to really carve space that's innovative and meaningful. So it was an opportunity to do something new together, and I think that's ultimately what propelled us towards the opportunity.
Yeah, it's not that often that you come across an opportunity where a new substance is now, that was illegal, becomes legal, and also accessible to people who are just startup people versus like a big pharma company coming in and be like, hey, now it's our thing. So I'm so glad it came out so organically out of Massachusetts from that. Of course, there's MSOs and stuff like that involved now, but I just like the beauty of that idea of like a new industry has literally just been created through law. And
Yes.
now it's like our time.
Yeah, and to be a first mover in a space, as a female entrepreneur, that has been exhilarating for me. So,
And
and
you're the first female in that area, right?
yeah, we were the first to open in Haverhill, and we were the first female economic empowerment. We were second to open after Pure Oasis in the middle of the pandemic. So,
Oh, I remember those days.
yeah, we had planned, obviously, of as everyone had, of opening much sooner. We were ready to go in January, February timeframe, and then the pandemic hit. And
So that slowed things down.
right, because ultimately we weren't able to open until May of 2020, and we were actually only green lighted to open curbside. So here we had built out this beautiful dispensary, and we had to pivot right before opening, and we had a point of sale in our vestibule, and we had our security booth as a point of sale. And because our vestibule qualified as curbside, we ran like a little miniature store in our vestibule,
Yeah.
and we cranked.
That's awesome. So people were just driving up, grabbing their, medication or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
And then driving back off because they could just do that little drop off
Yes.
aspect of it. I remember when those days were happening because we were in the build out process at that point during 2020 because we eventually ended up launching in March of 2022. So it took us a little bit longer than we were expecting, like
Right.
many things. But you also had some trouble launching, I think, as well, right? So you were like, all right, we're in it. It's 2018. Let's start applying. You get everything ready to go. Now you said you were looking for space. Then you found a spot, maybe.
Yes, we looked at several spaces, several zones. We worked with the city on developing safe, regulated cannabis zoning. That was a challenge. We helped defeat the ban that was trying to go down.
Oh, they were
April.
literally just trying to ban it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of the things.
That was our first hurdle, and we defeated the ban. We got a ton of local support down at City Hall, people to call, email. We made a lot of noise about it. And
Was that just you or somebody else in Haverhill?
That was me.
also trying to start it. It's like you guys were leading
that was
all
STEM. That was STEM and the yoga community, and people I had met over my course of living in Haverhill as being someone not born and raised in Haverhill, but had a great, relationship with so many wonderful people in the community. And they showed up at all the meetings, and the police department helped behind the scenes, just support instead of, work against us. And we had a ton of awesome city councilors that, were open-minded enough to sit and they listened and they learned. It was a long process, and not everyone got there. So there were a lot of no's that we had to constantly keep going back to and trying to massage those relationships, essentially.
Yeah, because when I think of back then, especially, you couldn't find any property. Property was scarce. They wanted to pigeonhole you into an industrial park, right? I'm sure you probably fought those battles, but you're like, well, it's a commercial business. We need to be on a main strip. And then on top of everything, you get a lot of no's. It's a NIMBY kind of situation. Of course, things maybe have changed a lot since then.
Right.
But in the very beginning, it was very much NIMBY, not in my backyard, get it out of here. I'll go to the next town over if you need it, kind of thing. That's what we're dealing with currently in our town.
Yes, and I think that was what was so empowering about, following through on the seed, the idea of STEM, seeing it to fruition, was just not letting that opposition really deter anything. It made it more difficult. It costs me time and some sleepless nights. But
Absolutely.
That's what I think also as entrepreneurs, we're sickly addicted to that adrenaline rush that you get when you chase something that someone says is impossible. And you're like, no, I actually think I can do that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that I tell my kids all the time, that I still have a chip on my shoulder. I can't get rid of it. I don't know what it is. I'm just if somebody says I can't do something, I'm doing it. No matter what it is, I'll figure a way to do it, So that's the entrepreneurial spirit, because I do feel there's a lot of people out there that are like that. Not everybody, of course, is like that, because some people just want to have the 9 to 5 and that's what they want to do, which is totally respectable. But I've never actually saw the world that way myself personally.
Right.
So what happens when you go to launch, though? Wasn't there some kind of a civil suit that had filed?
Yeah. So in addition to all the support that we had, we also had to contend with this, the old guard in Haverhill, this notion of not in my backyard, but also you're not from here. And so I contended with my neighbors to the adjacent property, basically suing me and trying to prevent me from opening, and in fact delayed us quite a bit. But also right before we opened, we kept our opening a secret so that they wouldn't they wouldn't have advance notice to file a preliminary injunction. They caught wind of it. So that's why we actually were cleared to open for a Tuesday, and my attorney made us wait until a Saturday so that we could file on Friday morning our final paperwork with the state. And then we didn't even announce it until I think 4 p.m. or 8 p.m. the night before we opened, and we still had a line the next morning. But they did sneak in a preliminary injunction and kicked off a 5-year legal battle.
A 5-year legal battle starting in 2020?
And that started well before, because they started meddling in all of the meetings. So, really that started as soon as we closed on our property downtown. They were very...
So once they found out the property,
yeah,
they're like, I'm your neighbor.
You got to pay me. They asked me to pay them $30,000.
$30,000 just to be quiet?
Yes, and then when we did not acquiesce, just to not get involved with our process, that we owed it to them because of the way that they felt the previous owner had treated them. And then when we didn't acquiesce, the demand went up to $50,000, and then all the way up to $75,000 plus.
What?
So I sought counsel of an attorney, and we ended up filing litigation in the Essex Superior Court for violation of my civil rights, defamation.
They did not want you guys there at all.
They did not want us there. They lost the preliminary injunction and lost all of their legal battles. We just prevailed in front of a 14-person jury in a 2-week jury trial last December.
Last December. that's how long that this has been going on for.
Yes.
And so many questions arise from that, because I think about the amount of money you have to spend on legal is just insane. Lawyers are extremely expensive to utilize, but they're worth their weight if they're the right attorney, especially. And so you're spending all this money, you're being almost extorted in a sense, because you're just like, pay us this money or we're not going to go away. What happens? So like, are they cool now? I mean, it's just December, so that
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
They just lost all of their appeals. They appealed all of the post verdict things that they could. They requested a new trial. That was denied. The next is my hearing for attorney's fees on April 10th.
So you can reclaim some of those attorney fees.
Yes.
They should be paying.
Because there was a civil rights violation that the jury found them to be liable for, in addition to defamation. And so I'm so glad it's over. The civil rights charge was basically a harassment-based claim. So we prevailed on 3 out of the 4 motions that we had filed against them, and I'm just happy to have it all behind us.
That's the most. It's just another weight off your shoulders right now, right?
Yeah.
There's other things you got to deal with.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to deal with is a lawsuit.
Right, and we were also able to wrap up our litigation with the city of Haverhill last year in November. So it was a busy fall for us.
So that was November, and then December was a civil suit. So let's talk about that one as much as you can, of course. And I'm sure you can't disclose everything what happened, but I think that's a lot of what you've been known for recently, because you've been in all the headlines regarding HCA reform and all this other stuff. So host community agreements, when they were put in place, they were the towns believed it to be, the state was like, here's a process, everybody, and everybody just follows this process. The towns saw it as, it's my money, and they were like, we want our 3% tax and we want our 3% impact, and anything above that is just, gravy for us. And so, there have been towns who have asked us, for instance, our HCA story, really briefly, is that when we first started looking for property around different towns, before we signed any lease, I would go to that town's administrator, town managers, whatever. And because I never really looked at cities. Cities have mayors, I guess. Right?
Yes.
But the town administrators they're in their office. You just like walk in and just start talking to them. And so I went to a bunch of towns around here because I was kind of like trying to find just a spot that was kind of close to where I lived. And I had one town administrator tell me that the last company who was here was paying $250,000 just in donations, quote, donations, in order to exist in this. And they said, we can't take anything less than that, because in our contract with them, and the 2 or 3 other companies that came before them, it says in their contract that if they get a better deal, if the town gives someone else a better deal, we now have to get that deal too. So in order
the most favorable nations clause.
Yes, exactly, MFN. So in the most favorable nations side of things, it basically meant that we had to come up with $250,000 a year minimum to pay this town just to exist. Whether we made $1 or we made $1 million, it didn't matter. We had to come up with that money. So I always looked at this as preposterous. I was just like, that's not the spirit of the law, right? So, but yours went, and you actually went even further, and you started basically going a suit against Haverhill to reclaim some of the funds because you had already paid some of it? Tell me through that story.
Yeah. So initially, I chose to pursue the litigation because the city wasn't supplying documentation of how the funds that they alleged they were collecting were actually being spent. And so that was the genesis for the lawsuit. We were pretty public about the litigation while it was ongoing. We have since come to a settlement with the city, and I'm grateful to the new administration. We filed litigation under an old mayor, Mayor Fiorentini, who had been in power for 2 decades in Haverhill. And we have a new guard, a new leader, and she was able to sit down at the table, and I'm grateful to her and her administration for helping bring this to a close.
And because you had already paid them a bunch of
we paid the whole time as we were supposed to. We just paid in protests. So they had our money, but we didn't have the documentation.
Right. I think that's a big stickler for a lot of companies. And I know there's a lot of operators in Massachusetts that are going through this debate right now. To this date, it's still happening with his HCAs, that the state is saying, or the regulatory body, our regulatory body, the Cannabis Control Commission, the CCC, has stated that you have to present line items of where the money was spent, and it has to go towards specific impact that company, that the marijuana business has in that town. So we're a manufacturer. We have zero impact, and we all knew we had zero impact. And even the town administrator realizes, like, you guys don't really have it. He's told me that over the phone. He's like, you don't have an impact.
Right.
It's not like we're calling in police for details or anything like that. There's no traffic for us. It's literally, it's a regular old industrial, zone where we are. And we have, a handful of employees that show up every day. That's our impact. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like road wear and tear occasionally or something like that. But there's a lot of companies right now that can't come to an agreement with their town. And I've advised a few, especially, to go for the waiver at this point. Just have the town sign the waiver, because the last thing a town wants to do is go through KP law, which everybody uses in Massachusetts for some reason. KP law basically states that, like, there's contract negotiation that's going to happen. And at that point, I was like, well, I don't want to spend money on attorney fees. There's this really handy document called a waiver. If you just sign this, we can just move on with our lives. So fortunately, our town signed that.
That's amazing. I'm not hearing of many towns that are, but maybe you are, and that would be good news.
Yeah, we are in a very nice town in that sense, where they understand it, they get it, even though they still feel it's been like kind of a rug pull, because the town was looking at that money as, oh, let's go spend it on sidewalks. Let's go.
It's free money.
It's free money. It's just going to keep on coming in, forever. And so let's just take all this money and let's start putting it into all these other things, which you can for the tax revenue, but not for the fee. And that's the difference. Tax revenue, you can charge up to 3%. Usually gets passed on to the customer, of course. And for a total of 20% tax is on the adult use side. But the impact fee is a fee. It's not a tax. And so there's a big difference with that one.
Yeah, it's got to be related to something real and tangible,
right,
that you can print on a piece of paper on an invoice and say, this is what we spent it on.
Exactly. So whatever the number is, it's $10,000 for a detail. It's, $20,000 for improvements to the parking lots or whatever, or the sidewalk going into it, because it's directly related to the impact that you're having in the town. Totally fine. Write that check all day. But you can't just say, we're not going to tell you what we did with the money. We're just going to take it. And that's where I feel like it's not in the spirit of the law. Like, we're supposed to only pay that for impact. But in your particular case, since all that was happening, like, what are you hearing? Like, do people reach out to you often and be like, how did you deal with this? And, my town is doing this. How would you?
They do. They reach out a lot. And in fact, my attorney's practice has grown considerably. I think he's up to about 20 operators that he's representing. And he was a former yoga student of mine, my litigator. So he's a really great guy. If anyone's going through it, and I know it's a scary process, but he's a local Haverhill gentleman. And like you said, no one likes attorneys, but I love my attorneys. Him and his co-counsel, Kristen, have just been incredible and, helped us to keep fighting and keep going. And just, it wasn't even about recouping the money. It's just about the moral of it.
Right.
Like, if
it's
the principle. And don't forget that, we have all of these taxes to contend with and so much other red tape that we have to pay attorneys for. And everyone assumes that, cannabis is lined. But, our dear friends are going out of business right now because the market is in a really delicate place. And I think we don't need these fees because it's already straining enough to be in operation. And we're already doing such good things as an industry that they just need to go away.
Yeah, I think a lot of this needs to go away in general because, you didn't even mention 280E, for instance, right?
Right.
Now, on top of that, for those who don't understand 280E basically means that if you're running, this is a federal tax rule. And again, I actually do like attorneys. I love attorneys.
I love my CPA too. She's great.
Exactly. I love my controller, my accountants. Everybody is making the system work, and I think it's wonderful. I don't always love paying the bill, but I do love their work. That's why I chose to work with them, right? Because I've worked with plenty of attorneys who I'm like, I probably wouldn't work with this person again. But basically for 280E, and so tax code, whatever you want to call it, I'm not that guy who's going to know all those details. But that basically means that you're doing something illegal, and even though it's illegal, we still need to see tax revenue from that. You have to pay your taxes, even if you're selling, heroin. You're supposed to claim it, right? And so for us, since we're in a state that has been legalized, now Massachusetts doesn't have a 280E. That was a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, and that was helpful.
It was very helpful, right? Because there's a couple percent here and there that we didn't have to pay any attention to anymore. That was fantastic. But 280E on the federal level, since it's federally illegal, means that we can't do normal write-offs, right? Any business gets to write off their marketing expense. They get to write off their advertising. They get to have, if you have a big event and you have all this food and stuff like that, that's a business expense. You can write off all these things and certain percentages of it. Whereas the only thing we can write off is anything that's truly related to COGS. Basically, stuff that means that we have anything we spend money on that actually is able to deliver the product to the customer, kind of in a sense. So for us as a manufacturer, our COGS are pretty straightforward. It's like we have ingredients, we have packaging, we have labels, whatever, right? And distillate and stuff like that. We can write all that stuff off. But anytime we want to throw an event or anytime we want to do anything like extra special for the team or anything like that, none of that's a write-off. All of our marketing, advertising,
just straight out of your cash flow. And
exactly.
There's not a lot of cash flow in a lot of businesses right now. And I think to tie it back to the community, like trying to educate local politicians on that strain on the business has been difficult.
Well, yeah, I don't think they understand it unless they're in it, and they're not in it, right? So they're taking it from an outsider's perspective. And I think that if anybody was to start a business today, I wouldn't recommend going into cannabis first and foremost. That's like a thing. But I mean, unless you really truly love pain and suffering, great. But the idea of when you go into a new business, not being able to take these basic write-offs for thing, it's like we're already handcuffed behind our backs just to try to do anything basic in this world. And now on top of that, we've got towns coming after us with HCAs. We have the CCC with all the regulations that they're trying to contend with, whether it's testing issues, like that's just been coming up a lot lately. And also, they don't even know if there was, I think that was part of one of the rulings that you actually were a part of, which is, does the CCC have the right to dictate the towns to even adhere to the rule of line items and stuff like that on these HCAs?
Yeah, we took the position from the beginning that the CCC has always had that, and that the legislation that we fought so hard for and the governor signed into law to help with equity in this industry, we believe that further elucidated that they had the right to dictate jurisdiction over cities and towns. Yet we're still seeing cities and towns, fighting for their perspective, which is that the state does not have that right.
Right. And again, I think the one thing that the towns have going for them is that they all probably use KP Law. And KP Law, since it's one firm that most of the towns use, like 80% of the towns, I think, in Massachusetts uses one law firm. I'm not sure if everybody realizes that. They all have that communication behind the scenes, be like, hey, here's what we did in this town. Here's what you're going to say to this person. So they're telling the town administrators, like, here's your position, because it's already been proven to work in this other town. So they've got these back channels that immediately allows towns to stay on top of these things, whereas we don't, because we're not necessarily communicating that easily, which is why I was asking if operators are coming to you. And if you were to start all over again, what would you do different? Would you choose Haverhill? Things like that.
I would definitely choose Haverhill again. I love being a business owner in Haverhill, despite the red tape. It has all been worth it. Our customer base is incredible. We have the best employees. It's like a family down there. And I think we're setting our business up not just to sell. We are setting our business up so that we can enjoy it for, as long as we're lucky enough to have it. And our children are in the community. We have a 4 and a 7-year-old. So I think Haverhill's our home, and we still believe in the mission of cannabis, the mission of our community, and doing right by our community. It's a big responsibility to hold a cannabis license, and we don't take it lightly. So yeah, we're grateful for the opportunity to be involved in this industry, to work with amazing brands like Good Feels. We sell Good Feels at STEM.
Yay.
So I think the brand partners have been incredible, and I've really loved getting to meet some of my best friends in this industry, own their own companies, and I've watched their processes from before they were open. Me and Angela Brown from Coast were on the phone with each other. We were opening very much at the same time. She got green lighted in March. I was in May, but she knew I was supposed to open in February. So, and I was 9 months pregnant when I opened. So I thought I was going to open at 5 months pregnant and have a few months to be at the shop.
Yep.
But that just wasn't the case.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. I think, and we were also supposed to launch. We actually ended up spending an extra $500,000, something around there, in payroll and lease and rent and all this other stuff, because of the delays of getting open. Because we were ready in like October, we didn't launch until March. We premiered at March 2022 NECAN. That was our first. It was like that day we almost got our commence, basically, kind of thing. And I remember kind of like the struggles of just getting that final commence, just to like, when's it going to come through? When's it going to come through? And it was just like taking so long, just getting the PFLI, the final license, you know what I mean?
We got our final license in our living room because it was the first remote meeting during COVID.
We did ours remote as well. So our PLFI, I was actually on vacation in Vermont or New Hampshire, ski vacation with my family. And it's like February break or something like that, because I have 3 children myself. And I remember being like, all right, if it happens,
Yeah.
I'll be on vacation, just Zoom me, in or whatever like that. It's fine. And everything was remote. All of our stuff was remote because it was during the pandemic. That's a really good point, because back then, I remember when I first started, people were like, oh yeah, there's a huge checklist of things you gotta do from Joe Nicholson. And it was just like, if you check all these things off, and when they come in, you should have the checklist ready. So when they come in, they look at all these little things, you have everything covered. In reality, it was all virtual for us.
Right. Yeah, we did virtual as well. And then, but they dinged us on not having a means to communicate it with someone who might be Russian speaking. So that was our one camera angle. Those were our only hangups on that. So that pushed us out even another month.
Is that crazy? Another month?
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it was. And I was getting more and more pregnant. So the stress was amazing. But we opened curbside. We saw a full, we filled all of our appointments our first day, despite only announcing at 8 p.m. the night before that we were opening. So we haven't looked back since, hit the ground running.
So how do you parent as a cannabis operator also? Are you a mom first or a cannabis operator first?
I'm both. I wear both hats at the same time all the time. So I don't really get much separation. I just have to figure out, my husband's homesick with our son today. We have to navigate that real time all the time, as I'm sure you can relate. And I hold both roles really proud. I don't think I would be as good of a mom if I didn't fulfill that entrepreneurial drive that I have in my life. And I'm proud to show my daughter and my son what that looks like. So they are with us as much as they can be. They can't come into the store. But right now they can come above the store because it's a separate entity, and they'll hang out there and play ping pong, and our staff can go up and say hello to them, and they know our staff. So that we do integrate the two well.
Yeah. And I think we do a pretty good job of that here as well. My 3 children have all been to our office as well, but not to the facility, of course.
Right.
But we have a side office where we can just have our, sales and marketing meetings and stuff like that, where there's just more space to sit.
Yeah.
Our facility is jam-packed with just like processing space, basically. It's a processing vault and a vault, and that's it. That's only, there's 2 rooms in our entire facility, and that's all we have. And, but I actually really think that's important, though, because it's like, it's a normal business. I have children. And, my staff also, like people who work here also know my children. Like it's not like this demonized thing like, oh my God, you can't talk to these people because they sell weed or something crazy. You know what I mean? Whereas I think a
Yeah.
lot of people might be like, oh, there's weed next door. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I do find having to censor myself a little bit more on my car phone calls because my 7-year-old, um, I don't know what she says at school, and I do know that one day she came home from school when the old mayor was in guard, and he had been into her classroom that day to read a story, and she got a little cheeky about what she might have said, and so I still don't know to this day.
You know that
Oh
there's a
yeah.
battle happening.
Oh
So
yeah, she's very in tune. It's been something we've been going to court for we have to leave at 6 in the morning in suits, and where are you going? And we're hoping to resolve this matter. And so they pay attention, they understand, they use big vocabulary words, and they're very well educated on cannabis and its benefits.
awesome. That's fantastic. And so you mentioned that there's a second space in the building. So do you guys own the building?
We
or-
do. I have a
That's
picture of
fantastic.
the building. I have the picture of the
Show me the picture. I'm so super curious.
picture of the building from the late 1800s. You can see there's a horse and buggy down here. This portion of the building is where STEM resides today. You can see there's a gentleman hanging out the window here. I'm thinking of having my husband Adam recreate this photo up in this top floor window here. But STEM is this street level property, and we also occupy a walkout basement. So there's 2 floors of the retail establishment, but a separate entrance here to a separate unit in the building, and that's known as 126 Washington Street. And there's 2 floors of unfinished mill space. This is the only building at the turn of the century that survived the fire, and I have some wicked cool pictures of this if you want.
I forgot about that. It's one of those towns that had to be rebuilt, basically.
Yeah, you can see here, and this is estimated to be taken, shortly after all of Haverhill burned to the ground. And this is STEM's building right here. There's a 1 block of buildings. STEM is in the middle, and it's the only building that survived. So we literally have risen out of the ashes to be a pot shop.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we love this photo. I love this photo so much. There's another close up of the guy hanging out the window. So much happened in this building. We're going to try to bring the building back to life. We just were lucky to receive the grants money for the Social Equity Grant Fund to help bring this building up to ADA compliance so that we can allow and welcome the general public to enjoy those upper floors of the building.
So that's actually I'm super curious about that as well, because I'm not in the retail side. So
Yes.
ADA compliance, you have to make it so people are able to get to those upper floors. Does that mean putting in an elevator or?
That's correct. We're probably going to need to invest in an elevator structure as well as another stairwell for ingress and egress. We have a very old stairwell from the front, but if we were to open it to the public for ADA compliance reasons and accessibility, we would need to have that added. If we were unable to do that, then we would have no choice but to just make it, single unit apartments and housing up there. And to me, this building is such a treasure in Haverhill that I would love the opportunity to bring that space to life as an event space.
Right. So in event space, now you actually qualify for social consumption,
We do, yes.
because SCE and EEs get access to social consumption, whereas an MB like myself doesn't necessarily have access to that. What about something like social consumption for that space?
Yeah, absolutely. That is our goal. We would love to design a really cool educational space up there, a space that brand partners could utilize for any sort of educational gathering they would
Take over in a sense.
take over, but also be open to the public. There's so many people that live within walking distance downtown, and they're building housing by the minute down there. So the walkability of the city is prime for this. We're also directly across from an MBTA, public transport, and the Amtrak commuter rail.
Wow.
We can see it from out the
amazing.
window. This is so interesting. So this is STEM's building right here. This building right here, and that's the train. So it's still there to this day, and now it's the MBTA commuter rail.
So it's an above ground
Above ground.
part.
Above ground train. Yep.
So
yeah.
So when it comes to, I guess, on the social consumption side, obviously having brands come in and stuff like that, I'm really excited about social consumption as well, even though I can't necessarily take advantage of it right away outside in a direct way.
Right.
But I can also, partner with somebody who does have that to do like a brand takeover or something like that. What do you can you speak a little bit on the retail side of things? What are you seeing as trends right now? Is there anything that's like coming up that you're like really excited about? And maybe either in the retail side or the marketing side.
Yeah, we're really excited about our loyalty program. It hits different. We have put a lot of thought into a compliant loyalty process that's engaging and old school. We have really cool digital punch cards on your phone that as soon as you walk through the door or walk by STEM, it reminds you that, hey, have you filled out your punch card for today? So that's a really cool initiative.
So you're encouraging them to come to the store.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we rely on that loyalty of our local neighborhoods. I think they have shopped with us from the beginning. And as long as we keep providing them with top-notch customer service, really great product, and a cool, interesting experience, they're going to continue to come and find value in what we're offering.
Yeah. One of the things I always encourage, this is things I've said many times and probably a few times on the podcast, which is retail stores have to focus on their customers and not necessarily their competitors.
Yes.
Like focus on owning the customer, focus on doing a really good job at servicing them really, really well, and they will be loyal to you, right?
Yes.
Because the people who are the price shoppers, for instance, they're fickle. They're going to go to any store which just has the cheapest price.
Right.
I would not go to the lowest common denominator just to get those people in, because as soon as that deal's over, they're going to go shop at the other store again, right? Whereas if you can get real loyal customers through a loyalty program and et cetera, and of course you're going to give up, however you can on a one-on-one basis for advertising compliance, be able to give them some kind of special deals and stuff like that to be able to take advantage of that loyalty program. You're going to get way more value from these customers, and they're going to feel really valued as customers as well, versus being like, oh, we just have, dollar pre-rolls today. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to go hunt for the next dollar pre-roll. Right.
And I think because my husband and I are, living and breathing this business every single day, that we're super dialed into that the customer is how we stay in business. And we want to appeal to that customer that's the loyal customer and not necessarily the price hunter. And there's definitely that happening in every market. And I think that's why the industry feels so unstable right now. And the talk about the race to the bottom and then real time seeing people go out of business is starting to make people pay attention a bit. But I think if we can stay focused on the why for the consumer and the why for the brand, and when those continue to align, that's the successful model.
So I don't want to get you in trouble here, but like 400 stores, approximately retail stores. Now, that's just the list that I pulled the other day. And
that's what we're currently up to?
Yeah, okay. I'm sure there's probably like maybe 20 closures in there too that I'm not counting.
Right.
So maybe like 380. What do you think Massachusetts can support? Like in Haverhill, how many stores are there right now, for instance?
We have 4. We're zoned for 6. I don't think Haverhill could support another store. We're at our max for sure. I think every market is feeling that pressure right now, and I'm sure the other operators in Haverhill would agree that it's a tough space. But I think again, it's not a new concept of competition. It's in every single industry, and you can't focus on it. You have to really, it drives you to continue to innovate, continue to find ways to educate and empower your consumer base so that they want to keep shopping with you.
And do you find you're a Do you have any expansion plans in the future for retail or product manufacturing or cultivation?
We tried to get another retail going in Newburyport at one point, and I don't think our itch is on the retail side per se in Massachusetts. I think we're really going to lean into social consumption. We run right now private events, but the ability to then scale those to make them public is really exciting to me on an intimate level, but also on a bigger scale. I think is really exciting to me. I have an event planning background. Since I was 19, I've worked in the marketing event planning space for small to 5,000, 6,000 person events.
Wow.
And so I think just thinking about the opportunity is really exciting to me. I know it's not the most lucrative model on its own right, but I think coupled being that this potential vision would be above our dispensary, that the two brands would serve each other really well and only enhance the STEM brand.
Yeah, because I think because we did a panel with a few people not too long ago about social consumption when the draft regulations, or actually I don't think it even draft at that point. I think there was a presentation at that point of like what the regulations may be for social consumption, and I actually haven't revisited that since, so I actually don't know what the regulations are or the draft regulations are that are being proposed. But could you maybe speak to that a little bit? Are they favorable to what you're trying to do?
They are favorable to what we're trying to do. There's no alcohol allowed on site, which is fine
I like
and
that.
makes me excited for particularly brands like yours, because we can do really exciting things with organic juice bars and all my yoga coming back in, really delicious food. Food is going to be a necessity. We're thinking of a couple golf simulators in our space, something that just feels like you want to hang out there. There's other things to do. And you can, consume an edible, consume a THC-infused beverage, and hopefully if we have an outdoor space, spark up.
Right. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, because of course I think when people think of social consumption, at least me personally, when I originally heard the idea of social consumption, I was like, why is somebody just going to light up in some random dark room with a bunch of other random people?
I think there will be ways to do indoor space well. I think it's going to be very expensive because I think you're getting the investment on the ventilation. It's something I'm open-minded to if I can do it the right, safest way possible. Unclear as to whether all communities will allow that. There's certain things in the ordinances that I think will be unique community to community. So I think all of this will be TBD.
Right, exactly. And I think, the one thing that towns have the power to do is they zone, right? That's their big hammer that they just use on everybody. Be like, hey, we're going to zone it and we're going to put you in the corner back lot of an industrial park. And then, so if somebody wants to go to your social consumption lounge, they literally have to go through and pass like Big Mac trucks and stuff like that.
Right.
And, all this auto body shops to get to this little hole in the wall. So I'm still on the fence of how well it's going to work. I'm excited for it because I do want to see a new license type is always very exciting. Just be like, all right, there's something new. How what's our play on it? And I think my perspective on it though is you definitely need another license to support it or like compete with it. So like a retailer with a social consumption makes a ton of sense too, because it's like, hey, we're STEM and here's our social consumption space. And so where you're not going to social consumption space, you can just go to STEM and buy whatever you need to.
Right.
So it kind of works really well. We've talked about it internally. If we had access to that license type, which I still have to figure out if I'm SE qualified or not, but I'm like borderline SE, but I don't know the rules that well. I should probably just talk to an attorney, pay them a bunch of money to figure out if I'm SE or not. But the point being, when I think about it from our perspective, we just want like a tasting room.
Yeah.
Because people can come in and be like, oh, let me just try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And we can create our own special SKUs that are just like sample size SKUs, right?
Well, I think brands like yours could come in to our space. This is one thing I envision and have these magical experiences where the consumer, you take the education up a notch.
Absolutely.
Do you taste the terpenes?
Right.
Let's talk about the flavor of this. Let's talk about the effect of this. How meaningful that could be and empowering for someone who might be scared of cannabis to do it by themselves for the first time.
Right, exactly. In a controlled environment.
In a controlled environment that feels like safe and happy, and you can swing the golf club a couple times, and then everyone can go home and have a magical night's sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So what about the events that you currently do, though? Because you already have some events, but they're private events.
We do, yeah. So we invite our brand partners and people that we have met throughout the years in the cannabis industry, Massachusetts and beyond, to our annual Green Goddess Invitational. That started 4 years ago with a all-women's golf tournament. We like to try new things out, and certain things end up clicking, and that was one of them for us. We got a really warm response to that first event. It was a surreal day, and I think that inspired us to try some more. We've had our Bong and Pong tournament.
I saw that one.
A couple of years ago, and we're bringing that back in April.
Fun.
We have about 10 teams left, and so brands will compete in a 32-team ping pong tournament. And we all the while support some wonderful nonprofits. So this year, we are supporting Patriots Helping Vets, a nonprofit that works harmoniously with the veterans community that have interest in growing their own plant medicine and getting them access to grow kits and things like that when they might not be able to afford it themselves, so that they can grow their own medicine and also teach them the horticultural therapy component of what cannabis can help with, some of their things that they might be struggling with. So that's been a really beautiful partnership that we've had. And we're also really excited to bring back our Green Goddess, our Genesis event. The Blast in the Grass is the women's golf clinic this year. And we look forward to it every year. Both events are held at the Renaissance in Haverhill. It's a private golf course, and they've been just so welcoming to us.
So how did that work? Because you had to go to them and be like, "Hey, we want to hold this event, but there's going to be weed."
Right, and I had actually taught yoga at the Renaissance years before, and had known many people that had worked there, and so that was an easy conversation I didn't expect the answer to be so warm and welcoming, and it was a delight that it was, because it made the partnership really easy.
Well, I was going to say, because the Renaissance would probably be a corporate-owned one.
It is a corporate-owned golf course. They have courses all over the world, and they were all about our concept from the beginning and thought it was great.
That's fantastic. I think that goes to show, you never know until you ask, right?
Yeah.
You got to just get in front of them, ask the questions, because if you don't ask the questions, then you automatic answer is no, obviously, at that point. And that even takes me by surprise. Renaissance would be like, oh yeah, totally, like,
oh yeah,
this thing.
They love it.
Yeah.
And we work with an LPGA, Kathy McPherson. It's her 4th year being involved with us.
Wow.
I take lessons from her now. She's my friend. She's very cool. She just every year empowers so many women to learn the game of golf. And we have some really amazing golf players that have been golfers their whole lives. And we have a majority of brand new golfers who started with us, some of them in the beginning, and now are fantastic golfers 4 years later.
Well, that's fantastic.
So we're taking over, gentlemen. I'm just letting you know.
That's fantastic. Go for it. Golf's
you're
never
going to
been
see
my
us
sport.
out there this year.
Golf has never been my sport. I think I went to one golf event years ago now, and it was a cannabis golf event. And I think I lasted the first 9 holes, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, because I get frustrated. I
It
hit
is
the ball and
frustrating.
I'm just like, I'm done.
Which is why I didn't pick it up. I didn't pick it up till the first Green Goddess Invitational. That was literally my first year playing golf, and I play probably 3 times a week now.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. I go anytime I can get on the golf course. I take my kids.
What's your favorite course?
I like Far Corner in Boxford. I play there a lot.
Oxford. Okay.
Yep, it's a great public course. It's pretty easy to get a tee time if you plan in advance, and it's 10 minutes from STEM, so it's perfect. I love playing at the Renaissance. It's a gorgeous course. That's a private course, unfortunately.
There's membership fees. Probably
Membership fees, but they let me play there a couple times just because we hold the events and things. So I've gotten to know the course really well, and it's very lovely to play there. But there's also a really cool course in Haverhill that I take my kids to, Garrison. It's a little par 3. And
Par threes. I love a par three.
yeah, you just walk,
what I
and
could do,
we
par
can
three.
go out after school, and they play in a little youth a youth golf league over there.
Fun.
So that's been really fun. Yeah, we love the golf and finding interesting ways to talk about cannabis culture without necessarily like always talking about the act of like consumption.
Right.
Like we can talk so much about, coming together as women and leadership opportunities and the state of the market and holding safe space. So many things that are really, really important in this industry and every industry. But combining that with joy and fun and inclusivity has been a really special blend. And love the Green Goddess Invitational. If anyone is ever interested in learning more information, I'm happy to chat about it. And that particular event is this year we're raising funds for the YWCA to help sexual assault victims in the Haverhill region. And this is our third or fourth year aligning with the YWCA, and they were one of the more high-profile nonprofits that said, yes, 100% we will work with a cannabis dispensary. We need funding. We appreciate what you're doing in the community, and we'll take assistance, absolutely, because so many of these groups are so underfunded.
They are. Yeah, and I feel like that was the weird part about doing, not to go back so far into the HCA side conversation again, but I think that's funny because in our plan for positive impact, one of the things that a lot of people write is like, oh, we're going to donate certain funds to certain organizations. When I was starting, like, I couldn't find a single organization that would take my money.
That was another thing that slowed me down during my application process is one of the nonprofits reneged, and I had to rewrite my whole HCA because they were in the HCA, and then they said, actually, we're not going to take the funds. And so it just, all those little things that people get nervous and second guess things and have too much time to think, and then that ultimately affects the licensee while they're trying to get all of their paperwork in order to apply for these really hard to acquire licenses.
Yeah, deals fall through all the time, especially due to time.
Right.
Just the more delays, the more chances the deal's going to fall through. So, wow, that's fantastic. What about, so getting back onto the specifically like the industry right now?
Yeah.
Going back to my other question, which was trends. Are you seeing anything right now that you're really excited about?
In terms of products?
Or products, or what people are doing that's really well? Obviously, loyalty programs seem to be.
Yeah, I think people are really leaning into loyalty and trying to, for us, talk about cannabis culture without necessarily like
Or feeding it to them in a sense.
Yeah, and we just lost both of our Instagram pages, but we've gotten them back. We hired an attorney to help us recoup those.
I'm going to need that attorney's phone number.
I will help you, and it was wonderful.
We've lost now 4 accounts, I think.
Yeah, I think
last year.
It's a real shame because I look back now that I have my account back at some of the things, and I'm trying to be more conservative in what I feel should be perfectly appropriate content, but that Meta has a hard time with, so that our page does not get shut down again. But I think it's just another thing that we have to deal with as cannabis operators. And there are already such limited ways to market to the consumer that at least that is a voice of community. And but it's difficult. And I think a lot of people, I know a lot of friends' pages are getting shut down. And I'll pass along what was passed along to me to you.
Yeah, I've been asking a few people because we've had our main page got shut down probably 6 months ago now. And then we had a backup already, and I think the backup got shut down.
Yep, my backup got shut down too.
And then we had 2 more we launched at the same time. One was the main, one was a backup, and they all got shut down.
Okay.
Literally 2 weeks ago again or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I'll get you the content.
Yeah. Well, I think, but you raise a good point where it's like, if any normal business, this stuff doesn't happen.
No.
Right? It's just insane. The amount of suffering that we have to go through just to exist in this world. But we persevere, right? And that's the thing. It's like the spirit of the entrepreneur. It's like, the suffering game, basically. How badly do you want it? How badly do you want to succeed? And showing up every single day and doing what you need to do to actually grow. So kudos to you to be in the game still after all these years and all these trials and tribulations. But what is the future of, I guess, STEM look like today?
Well, we're about to celebrate our 5 years in business on May 30th. 2020 is when we opened, so 2025 is it will be our 5 year. And we really think the sky's the limit. Let's go from, STEM to sky. Let's build out our upstairs. Let's launch social consumption in a responsible, transparent way that, works with the commission, works with city officials, that works with local law enforcement. They're a big component to this. So I think it just needs to be done with patience, with perseverance and tenacity. And we're coming. The license type is coming. It's opening. It's coming to communities.
Get ready. And the communities have to be aware. I mean, they're obviously probably aware because, again,
communities need to opt in, from my understanding, and that will be a delicate matter for applicants to persevere. I feel like we're, in a sense, getting ready for round 2 in Haverhill, not in a bad way, here we go, let's roll up our sleeves again. We're back to the drawing board. We're working with an architect. I actually have a really exciting meeting with the architect this afternoon at the building to see some proposed concepts and see if we can, feasibly install the infrastructure that we need to bring the building up to code compliance.
Yeah, the ADA stuff is definitely going to be an expensive component of that. But, I think like all entrepreneurs, you'll find a way. And what we tell people, especially a lot of the staff we have here is, if there's any blocks in your way, you can go around it, you can go over it, or you can go through it.
Right.
But there's a way around. There's a way to get through this that you maybe haven't seen it yet. And I feel like it's a longevity game. That's what it comes down to, is like being in the market, 5 years from now, if you see yourself at the 10-year anniversary, you know what I mean? Like, what does that look like to you? And like, what's success mean to you, I guess, in say like 10 years or at the 10-year anniversary?
That's a great question. I think success means to me is knowing that the people around me are also achieving success, that all of my friends that are fighting hard at all of their endeavors, that we're all rising together. That would be beautiful to me. I think the market right now, it'll be interesting at NECANN to see just, how everyone navigates this dynamic pressure that we're all feeling with one another. But I think we really have to focus on the people that we, share similar philosophies and missions with, and band together and continue to create empowering educational community experiences for people, because we made a commitment to that when we signed on board to be operators, and our work's not done yet. It's just beginning.
Yeah, I so believe in that. And I do feel like our hearts are in the right place, right? And we know we're doing good work, despite of all the blocks that we may face on a daily basis.
Right. And I think like you just having this show and doing these incredible interviews, I've gotten to watch several of them with some women that I really, really admire. And thank you for doing this work, because it's beautiful to hear from other people and their experiences. And we all learn so much from each other in that way.
Yeah. And I learn something every time I sit down and talk to somebody. I always learn something new, which is why I like doing them. And I like to share just positivity, because there's too much negativity in this world. And there's so many people out there that are trying to rip you down and tear you down every chance they have. And it's like, let's just share this. I'll bring on other manufacturers, I'll bring on retailers, I'll bring on cultivators, I'll bring on whoever wants to talk and whoever has an interesting story but that they want to share, that I think will be valuable for me to hear, and as well as the audience will hear. So, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason, and your space is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.